this is Harry Faber after the German expedition. I've had an absolutely wonderful time visiting with Bruce and his wife. It was just lovely. Had a little bit of a hiccup going towards Bruce's, in as much as I had some navigational problems, but it all ended well, and it was fine. And obviously I got home and the Skoda performed faultlessly, which is not bad for a car 16 years old. And while I was coming back from Bruce's, I was watching the odometer, the mileometer, and it ticked up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what's that? 123,465 miles on it. It's done a few more since then, because that was the other side of Brussels in Belgium. An excellent experience. I thoroughly recommend it. I don't know how many of you can drive around Germany from where you live, but it's wonderful. I've always felt driving in France, Belgium, Holland is wonderful. Germany is wonderful. You experience things that you won't have found in, for example, England. My car, apparently, the book says it will do 134 miles an hour. I've never seen that sort of speed on it, but I have. I've driven it at some considerably high speeds, and there's something quite interesting when you're driving on a road in what some people would call the slow lane, and you're doing 85 miles per hour, 90 miles per hour, and there are cars going past, you know, big Porsches or Mercedes, BMWs, things like that, and they're just going straight past you. And then you discover that you need to think a little bit differently. When you overtake the lorry, you know, you're running along at 85 and there's a lorry that's doing 60, and you don't want to be behind a big lorry doing 60, so for an Englishman it's a little bit interesting, because you've got to go the wrong way to overtake him, and you look in your mirrors. Trust me, you look in your mirrors, and you turn your head and you study the road, and there's a little dot in the fast lane, and you change down a gear and you floor the car, and the car accelerates from 85 towards the 100, and the little dot suddenly fills your rear view mirror, which is an interesting experience. So that was that. But anyway, I'm home now, home, safe, dry, well fed. Thank you very much for your hospitality. It was superb. And one of the great things of meeting people with the experiences and knowledge that Bruce has got is I was able to bounce a few ideas, and one of the subjects was small locomotives. These little locomotives, they have little electric motors in them, and some of these are 50, 60 years old, and some of the magnets lose their magnetism, lose their punch, and that causes the motor to potentially pull more amps than it should, and possibly burn out, or just not run as well as it should. So we were discussing remagnetising these, and in fact I watched several videos on YouTube by a chap called Ronald Dodd, who tells you all about the wonderful results you can get by remagnetising these. Now, I don't know what education each of you had, probably very varied, But somewhere in the back of my head was a physics teacher talking about magnetism and electricity and things that go with that. And he spoke about Fleming's right hand rule and Fleming's left hand rule and magnetic fields and lines of magnetic flux, and how if you're flying a big aeroplane from east to west or from west to east, you actually generate a potential difference across the wingspan. You generate current. If you fly north-south or south-north, you don't. So I know a little bit about magnets, but I've forgotten virtually everything that I ever knew. And then something came to mind. When I was about 7, during the last millennium, when I was about 7, we had a school teacher who said, tomorrow I want you all to bring a 6-inch nail. So we all went home, and I spoke to my dad and I said, Dad, I've got to take a 6-inch nail to school tomorrow. Now, my father, being the sort of chap he is, said a wire, an oval, a masonry, copper, cut nail, drawn nail, wire. Anyway, I don't know, Dad, I've got to take a 6-inch nail to school. Well, my father was a school teacher, and he thought, I know what the teacher at my school is going to be doing. So he ferreted around in the shed and he found me not a 6-inch nail but a 4-inch nail. And he said, I haven't got any 6-inch nails, you'll have to do with that one. And I actually went to school with a certain amount of fear, because I expected to take out my 4-inch nail and for the teacher to say, what didn't you understand? I told you 6-inch. But I actually did better than one of the other children who turned up with 6-inch nails. Anyway, what the teacher did, he gave us a lot of shellac coated copper wire, and we sat for a half an hour or so winding copper wire around the nail. And then when we'd wound it and sort of got it all on there and a bit of sticky tape to stop it all coming off, then we stripped the ends of the copper wire and we attached it to a battery. And I can't for the life of me remember, I think it was a 1.5 volt battery, it might have been a 3 volt battery, but whatever, we connected it to a battery. And this let us pick up paper clips and panel pins and things with the end of the nail, because we'd made an electromagnet. And then you pulled the wire off the battery and all the funny things you picked up had dropped. And then the teacher did something clever with an electromagnet and a sheet of paper and iron filings and drew pictures with the iron filings. It was all magic, and apparently that was everything I needed to know about magnets for the rest of my life, until I start thinking about these little chaps and how do you zap the magnet to make it work. So how do we remagnetise these things? Well, those of you that know me well know that in my pocket is a wallet with money in it, and some of the money has still got King George V's head on it. I don't like spending money. It goes against my fundamental philosophies. So I went into the workshop and I had a little rootle around under the bench. And some of you may remember the wreck of the Sea Cow. Some of you may. The Sea Cow was a 54-foot long North Sea trawler, which I was involved in the sinking of. We didn't mean to sink it, and it was all rather embarrassing, and we salvaged it and we stuck it up into a creek where we cut it apart. And a lot of the bits and pieces came my way, including these nice soft iron bobbins. They're actually rollers. They've actually got a bronze insert in them, but they're chunky soft iron. I don't think they're cast. I think they are forged, I think, but they're soft iron, and they come with this soft iron spindle. And I thought, right, what else have I got under the bench? It's always frightening to look under benches because you find things. And I thought, I've got wire. And I can take the Christmas lights off it, but I've got wire. And all I need to do is wind wire round those and then stick some electricity into it, and that will make an electromagnet. And that seemed like a jolly good idea until I started reading that you've got to get the amount of current right, and there are some things that if you do it sort of goes bang, and some things if you do it sort of bursts into flames, and some things if you do you could probably interfere with ground radar and close Heathrow Airport, which might not be a bad thing. The other thing is, the way I was going to do it, you need a 60-foot high 4-inch diameter copper rod to connect lightning to the power supply. You know, it's all a bit Frankenstein-y and messy. So I was actually persuaded to spend some money. Now, I've mentioned Ronald Dodd. I don't know the man. I've seen his videos, I've heard his presentation, and he seems to know quite a lot about Hornby 00 locomotives, and he makes and sells a magnetiser. Now I'm going to show it to you. It's fairly late in the evening and I'm not going to use it tonight. I want to do some other things. I've got to iron my socks for the morning, and I've got some domestic chores that need doing. You know, I've got to dry the tea bags that I used today so I can use them again tomorrow, and then I shall sell them to people on Tuesday. That all takes time. You know, drying out tea bags is a long process. So I'm not going to use this kit tonight. I'm not in a position to spend the time with it, but I thought I would show you what Ronald Dodd makes, and he supplies it with a compass because we want to know what the magnet was doing before we try to do anything strange to it. I could have done with this on my way to Bruce's. That would have saved me a lot of embarrassment. Perhaps next time I will, but you can use the compass against the magnet and it tells you which way is north and such likes, and so that's a good thing to have. That comes in the kit of parts. Wrapped up in here, I won't undo it, is a multimeter of some sort that will be very instructive to me to tell me what the locomotive's doing before we start messing about with it. We won't undo that at the moment. In this little bag, what we have is 2 pole pieces. In some respects, not that dissimilar to that, except they're nice and shiny and clean, and they've not been left to go rusty and horrible. Not quite sure what that other little gizmo is there. There's a little gizmo in this box. I'll have to read the instructions and see why I've got that. I'm sure there's a reason. The magnetiser itself, which comes with a power supply, this is a very pretty piece of equipment, isn't it? You've plugged the power supply into it, and then you press the button, and with the pole pieces inserted in the middle of the electromagnets, those pole pieces will turn into an electromagnet and will deal with anything that you've put between here. So you can magnetise your screwdriver tips or all sorts, but it's intended to be the right sort of size to use on these magnets. To use it on a locomotive like this, you do need to take the motor off, and you insert it in there the right way round. As you can see, we've got a polarity guide on it. You put the magnet in, squeeze the pole pieces onto it so they don't snap onto it, give it a zap, give it another zap, and my understanding is that will cure a sad, tired magnet. As I say, I'm not going to try it tonight, but tomorrow is another day. So there we are. It saves me mucking about with wire and diodes and resistors and trying to hook up a power supply and all of those things. So I'm very, very pleased so far with this. I will give you a full tech report when I start curing my tired locomotives. What I need to do now is cure my tired brain and body by, well, it involves being horizontal and shutting my eyes and snoring and things like that. So, good night to you all. We will have another look at this story.